All right, let's see. Should have appeared right on the main page. Says I'm live. Okay, there we go. Like mute myself. Go into the monitoring thing. Monetization on, please. I would like to make money as opposed to just YouTube. There it is. Viewing live. All right, one person already, and it's not Josh. Josh, you are slacking. Let me text him. Excuse me, phone. Please send the text that I'm telling you to. There we go. All right, it's 01, so I figure wait, I guess maybe 9 minutes then. Let people pour in. In the meantime, as usual, I'll check on stuff that I was too lazy to check on earlier before I started streaming. Oil, what are you doing? Why are you going down like that? You don't belong there. Silver is still ignoring reality, as are many of the others. This means the wall is going to be much harder when the market's face smashes into it. Platinum and palladium are probably the most alarming, actually. They really should not be down that low. And especially with South Africa's situation has gotten worse, it actually manages to get perpetually even worse, even in just like the 1 week in between streams every time I say that the situation is getting worse. All right, I actually have my sheet of stuff with me this time, so I don't have to look unprofessional like I did the other time. Is there anything else I wanted to peruse while we wait? Power consumption. Water already looked at. No, I think I basically looked at everything. We got anybody else? 5 total, 1 speaker, and no Josh, it looks like. At least not yet. All right, so time to prepare things, make my laptop's cooling fan hiss and spit at me by opening Google Earth. This is getting creepy. I mean, it's pretty easy to do. It's not like a complex thing, but it's still creepy. It remembers, Google remembers like what the last thing you were doing were, and for some of you may have watched the video. Very few of you did actually about Paraguay's potential drought relief. But I was looking up like stuff for Paraguay for that short video, and here we go. Google Earth just comes in, zoomed in on Paraguay, because Google just tracks everything you do. It's always listening and watching. Yep. Lost one or two. Still no Josh, apparently. The sidebar coming up with that one. I guess the sidebar's not up with that one like usual. I'm gonna check the list real quick, just make sure I have everything I can think of. there. That one. A couple new ones, actually. I don't feel like writing them down, but I have them at the forefront of my mind, so I hopefully shouldn't forget them during the stream. Huh. Josh, where are you? Right. If it's still that low compared to my like new usual average, I'm gonna assume not that many people are gonna show up. So we'll start in 4 or 5 minutes, I guess. Is anybody else with a voice out there? Guess I'll have Satera open just for the sake of it. What the? What did you? Oh, didn't realize I clicked on it that easily. Uh, Latvia. Mute these. Lucia. Antigua and Barbuda. Barbados. Anybody else? Uh, One other person, although we're down to either only 3 or 2 people, supposedly. Where's Josh, though? That's the real question. Right, I guess if no one's really going to show up, I will just go ahead and start in 2 or 3 minutes. In the meantime, I'll just breeze through this. Moldova, Zimbabwe. I figure some of those people probably saw me open the geography stuff and just dipped out because they didn't actually pay attention to anything I said. So they didn't realize that I'm doing this to pass time. Denmark, Botswana, Ethiopia, Togo, Iceland, Seychelles, Ghana, Liechtenstein, in between those two, Azerbaijan. It's going to be involved in several of the wars we're going to discuss. Sweden, Estonia, Tanzania, Cabo Verde, Mongolia, one of my favorites, San Marino, Sri Lanka, Magyar Ukraine, Bosnia, Argentina, Chile, US, Monaco, Sudan, probably going to be involved, Malaysia, Micronesia, Rwanda, Senegal, Eswatini, formerly Swaziland, Djibouti, Thailand, India, Italy, Morocco, potentially, Australia, Nicaragua, Cyprus, France, Haiti, descending into chaos currently, Chad, Belgium, Kitts and Nevis, Turkey, involved in quite a few that we are discussing soon, Bhutan, Andorra, Nauru, Laos, Mizoram, involved, well, the instigator of one upcoming conflict. Mali is about to collapse into civil war. Mauritius, Algeria, potentially involved in one. Singapore, Polska, Angola, Lithuania, Guinea, Cote d'Ivoire, Serbia, Armenia, potentially involved in a few. Brunei, Bahrain, Kyrgyzstan, South Africa, probably going to collapse, require an intervention. Syria, Malawi, New Zealand, El Salvador, country with a blasphemous name. Lesotho, Tunisia, Niger, Nepal, Cameroon, Papua New Guinea, Guinea-Bissau, Zhungur. Have anybody else? Oh, okay. Sorry for not looking. Apparently, we are actually getting some people in. Guess I just had to wait long enough. All right, that's like 4 speakers, but no Josh. Where is Josh? Did he respond to my text? He didn't respond to my text. All right, we're just going to accusingly assume that he fell asleep. Excuse me, I didn't click on Israel. I clicked on Jordan. Like, I'm assuming you guys saw that. My mouse cursor is right here on Jordan. Okay, maybe I need to slide it a little bit to the right, like a millimeter. Okay, that looks like that works. Okay, thank you, website. You are amazing with your coordination of clearly presuming my click to be on the country that my mouse was clearly over, yet somehow assuming that I must have meant to click the country that it was not on. Uzbekistan, Tuvalu there, Sao Tome and Principe, Costa Rica grows the best bananas, Malta, Lebanon, Grenada, we're almost done. Namibia, my favorite sub-Saharan African country, Croatia, definitely on my want to visit list, Sakartvelo, Uruguay, Panama, my favorite Latin American country, Tonga is down here, Burkina Faso, Turkmenistan, Luxembourg, Deutschland, South Korea, Iran, Iran's going to be involved in quite a few, Comoros, Zambia, Bangladesh, Trinidad and Tobago, excuse me, down here, please. Uganda makes awesome movies. They're not the CGI is really bad, but I mean the acting and the acting and like the intensity behind stuff is actually like really good. Slovakia, Oman, Ireland, the stable Congo, the smaller one, Belize, Colombia, Spain, Cambodia, Gabon, Japan, Indonesia, Bulgaria. Oh, Indonesia just set a new oil demand record. They hit a new all-time record high of over 2.5, as opposed to being right up at 2.5. Their most recent monthly average came in at 2.56 million barrels per day. North Macedonia, Somalia, Libya, potentially a actual intervention is going to be needed eventually. Equatorial Guinea, the UAE, Norway, Kenya, Gambia, Solomon Islands, the big Congo, where there's a eternal 5-way civil war and where there's potentially going to be an intervention. Venezuela, there is going to be a war with Venezuela. That is one of the ones we will speak about. The Bahamas, Kiribati, Tajikistan. Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan might go all out on each other eventually. Once there's no one, uh, once Russia is done face planting itself and internally falls apart, and once China face plants in Taiwan and then starts to crumble apart, once there's no one left interested in like coming in and policing on Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan, they're probably going to go all out on each other because they've basically been waiting to do that. Marshall Islands, Switzerland, Paraguay, Yemen. That's basically not really ending anytime soon. Russia. Iraq is going to be the site of fighting once again because that's just its destiny. Madagascar, Albania has some of the best songs, especially some of the best combat songs. Suriname, Vanuatu, Vietnam. Excuse me, I clicked on Vietnam. Thank you. The Philippines, Guatemala, Samoa, Central African Republic is also in a eternal civil war. Saudi Arabia, Cuba is starting to fall apart inside. Vincent and Grenadines. It's this one. Qatar, excuse me. Bolivia, Honduras, Sierra Leone, Burundi, Peru, Czech Republic, Jamaica, aka a giant pile of aluminum ore, South Sudan, Nigeria, Portugal, Netherlands, Dominica, Palau, Kazakhstan, Canada, and Pakistan. All right, we got everybody? There's Josh. Thank you, Nebraska, already. Give me $5 before we even really started anything. All right, let me look, see if I missed anything specifically important. Yeah, that's going to be the ultimate actual like cause of the U.S. Venezuela war that will ultimately last like a few weeks, anyways, because it's just going to be a massive cruise missile and airstrike bombardment on Venezuela, and they'll kind of collapse pretty fast because everyone usually compares every country the same way. But there's a drastic difference between Venezuela, Iraq, and Iran, which are all countries like people. Well, the U.S. did invade Iraq, obviously, and people envision the U.S. invading Iran and Venezuela. However, these are they're on completely different levels of how much actual fight is going to be had from their side trying to like enter said country. Iraq was like in the middle, to the point at which like it required an actual invasion. Iran would be on the high end, even despite the people hating their government. The people are still behind like the idea of Iran itself, and they would fight very vehemently. Whereas Venezuela is just already done. The government has nothing. Like I've said this in multiple streams before, Venezuela doesn't even really have a military anymore. It in on paper it has some tanks and some combat jets, but it has no money left to like maintain them. So they probably can't even move. What it does have is tens of thousands of guys in all black in ski masks that go around. The term you might be familiar with, black bagging people. You usually see it in movies like V for Vendetta, where they just throw a black bag over someone's head and make them disappear for speaking out against the government. That's what Venezuela's military, their quote unquote military, consists of now. So that's not uh, even if they even if those said ski mask black bagging dudes are actually willing to die for Maduro, which I highly doubt. That that's not really going to be a fight. Uh, and also like to the point, the people are also like really done with the regime, like more than any of the other potential conflict nations that the U.S. would be heavily involved in. So in terms of Venezuela, it's more going to be like a mass bombardment of military bases and some key government facilities, and then the regime will just fold on itself on its own, basically. As that one commenter said, the instigation of the conflict is going to come from this here. Venezuela has been constantly claiming that the western two-thirds of Guyana actually belongs to Venezuela. They conspicuously started claiming that after all the oil started getting found offshore of Guyana, and eventually, as uh, as many totalitarian regimes do, with a last dying gasp attempt to reinvigorate themselves, they usually launch some kind of war or invasion. Putin did with Ukraine. Xi Jinping's going to do it with Taiwan. Venezuela's probably going to try to take Guyana. It's going to be like uh, it's going to be like mind-numbingly pathetic though, because like I said, they have no real military. So I don't know. They're gonna cross. They're gonna cross in jeeps with some guys and some AKs and some river boats, maybe going down like some of the jungle rivers, I guess, with also some guys and some AKs, maybe a few RPGs. It's going to be pretty pathetic to see. And then the U.S. is going to respond. The whole thing in Venezuela itself is going to get crushed pretty fast. And that's inevitably going to result in regime change in Caracas, and which will result in the U.S.'s secret real goal behind responding to this, uh, and at the moment waiting for it to happen so that we can respond to it. The real goal is the reinstallation of a stable regime in Caracas that will then allow restoration of Venezuela's oil production to at least the 3 million barrel per day plateau that they're capable of maintaining long term, if not full on further development of the deeper heavy oil Orinoco belts that could bring them up to like 5 or 6 million barrels per day of a plateau. And also, obviously, defense of Guyana, who is becoming a decent oil producer rather quickly. And by the time Venezuela actually like tries that, is going to be a very decent one. Just with not with all of the discoveries, not all of them, just the ones in which drilling work and projects have started and plans have been like completely drawn up, which is I think like 70 to 80% of them. So just in the ones in which stuff has started or plans have been like laid out, designs have been drawn, just for those, and factoring in a decline for the fields that will be like 15 years old by that point, Guyana has been elevated again, now expected to be up to about 1.7 million barrels per day by around like 2033 to 2035. And if in reality, factoring in again, like the huge amount of oil that's likely going to continue to be discovered as only a like modest chunk of Guyana's basin has actually been explored, uh, inc- including like stuff that's yet to be discovered and the stuff that has already been discovered that hasn't been drawn into plans yet. It's more likely Guyana is actually going to end up peaking above two, probably closer to like 3 million barrels per day around like 2040 or so. But we'll have to wait and see for like the specifics of that. But yeah, the Venezuela tries to grab Guyana in some way, and then gets crushed by the U.S. in response for it. That's one of the various conflicts that is coming. That one's on my list of basically inevitable. You can kind of see that one coming from a mile away. And then I will check chat more frequently, like a responsible streamer. 15 or 18 people, awesome. Maybe we'll break the record again. We got up to 28 last time. Left to pick up the pieces. I mean that depends on what you mean by pick up the pieces. If you mean pick up the pieces like for the country itself internally, uh, whoever gets installed afterwards, and in terms of with what money, with the money that the outside world then pours into it to do so. If you mean picking up the pieces of the oil industry, the answer is those who can do it. In Venezuela's case, most of their restoration work that's been done over the last like 15 years or so on like older stuff and on all the stuff they failed to do has been Chevron. Coincidentally, my favorite of the oil industries. They're the ones who do a lot of our stuff up in Alaska as well, back up home where I wish I was. But and I mentioned in each stream and in each video as well, Venezuela also currently keeps letting Chevron back in for like a month or two. And within a month or two, Chevron's able to restore their oil production from like 600,000 up towards a million. However, then Caracas like gets jealous and kicks Chevron out. And so then their production collapses right back down to like 600,000. And then they invite Chevron back in again, repeat the process, kick them back out again. So the like simple idea, it wouldn't be just Chevron, but like the simple idea would be Maduro's gone, Caracas changes, and Chevron comes in and like stays, and thus is able to actually restore Venezuela's production up to their like real 3 million barrel per day capability. Over in Africa, excuse, where did my icon go? There we go. Not so much a war as just a singular military action. Uh, Egypt is going to bomb that dam eventually. It's going to happen. So for those who are unaware, the Nile comes up here, flows through Sudan, South Sudan, up into Ethiopia. Ethiopia has constructed a very large dam along the Nile and is obviously, as the drought situation for them gets worse, uh, or if it gets much worse, it will happen sooner. They are going to begin water withholdings to the detriment of the countries downstream from them, because when it's one country versus other countries deciding which people get like a critical resource, any given country is usually going to pick their own people. Even if the government doesn't care about their people, the government cares about staying in power, and they have to at least put up an illusion of caring about their people to do that. Except in the case of the government in Moscow, in which case they can just endlessly send waves of men to die to machine gun fire like it's World War One, and no one really seems to care. But in most other countries' cases, they have to put up some kind of an illusion. And Ethiopia will withhold that water if the situation calls for it, in which case Egypt has already point blank said that they will just bomb the dam. And like everyone keeps saying that like Egypt shouldn't mess with Ethiopia. Ethiopia would win the war, but the thing is, it's not going to be a war. There won't be a war. They don't even really have a means to fight each other. Sudan would have to like let them cross its territory to have like a big old arena match out there in the desert, which it's not going to do. Or Egypt or Ethiopia, which doesn't have a navy to do so, would have to like lawn foreign deploy like a bunch of forces and land somewhere, and then enter the other, which neither of them is really capable of doing, because Ethiopia doesn't have a actual navy. They do have a ceremonial navy, for the sake of having one that ports in Djibouti, I believe. Egypt does have a navy, and to the surprise of some, it does actually have two amphibious assault ships that can each carry 10 tanks and between 400 and 800 infantry combat troops. But that's kind of nothing. It doesn't it doesn't have the capability to like actually then keep going back and forth and bringing more and supplying them because it has no like if you look at like the U.S. military, for example, you'll see a lot of warships, you'll see the super carriers and the aircraft carriers, you'll see the massive amphibious landing fleet, and then you'll see this long list of hundreds of other vessels that it just has this big like umbrella category called auxiliary ships. Those are ships that constantly like do runs to come in really quickly, like offload supplies, more food and ammunition and fuel and stuff. The thing with a lot of other countries that have like amphibious ships that they could land forces with, like Egypt and Turkey, they don't, and in China's case also, they don't really have an auxiliary fleet that could then keep supplying those land forces, which is why China, which we'll talk about in a second, would have so much trouble or will have so much trouble when they invade Taiwan because they won't be able to keep bringing more forces to Taiwan shores because they will have to use their actual amphibious assault fleet that is meant to just deliver and ferry troops and vehicles. They will have to start using portions of that to deliver the supplies because they don't actually have the auxiliary like dedicated supply fleet that the US has, and that, though to a much smaller extent, some NATO nations like France and the UK have, and actually even Italy, to the surprise of some. But so they don't have an actual means to fight each other. So what's actually going to happen is it's literally just going to be a lone incursion. Sudan has already like tentatively agreed to let Egypt use its bases if Ethiopia ever like withholds the water. So Egypt would be able to fly a number of its F-16s down, refuel real quick in Sudan, and then fly across the border into Ethiopia and just bomb the dam, which would kind of solve the problem really quick. They might have to handle engagements with the Ethiopian Air Force, but the Ethiopian Air Force consists of, and I'm not joking, awesome equipment, really modern stuff like MiG 17s and some MiG 21s, I think, too. So that would be, an interesting fight. I'm sure it would be an equal 50-50. But that is another one that is basically inevitable. However, it doesn't have to be. There could, like the patterns of precipitation could suddenly change, and rain could suddenly start falling a lot in like Sudan and South Sudan. Downstream from the river in Ethiopia, and thus constantly have waters like flowing down to Egypt, even if Ethiopia was eventually to withhold water for being in drought. So ultimately, that confrontation is inevitable, maybe. However, climatology slash weather patterns could avert it or postpone it, I guess you could say. But outside of that, it's basically inevitable. All right, anybody else? No. To answer your question, Nebraska, before you came in, I was talking about. I usually end up mentioning this somehow in many different streams. Venezuela is vastly different from Iraq and Iran. Uh, in that Iran, although under-equipped with older stuff, Iran does have a competent, functional military that doesn't like the regime but believes in the country of Iran. So not for the regime, but for the country, they would fight vehemently against an invasion. Iraq had a initially on paper equipped military, and people assumed it was going to be competent, but it proved not to be. Whereas Venezuela is like Iraq was like the middle ground. Venezuela is the bottom of the barrel. Venezuela doesn't have a military anymore. They used to, and on paper they still own like tanks and fighter jets, but their government is broke now, so they can't actually afford to like maintain any of that. So what they have are guys in ski masks in jeeps who run around and black bag people who speak out against the government and make them disappear. And theoretically, in a conflict, they could arm those guys in ski masks in jeeps with AKs and RPGs, but that's not really that's not really the best strategy. Doesn't It's not really going to go all that well. Right. Where do we want to go next? Oh yeah, why not we go to the inevitable, like the true ultimate upcoming inevitable, the big brawl. China going for Taiwan. Am I 100% convinced they're going to go for it? Not 100% actually, because China might bring itself to fall apart inside first. If they stay together, then absolutely, yeah, they're going for Taiwan. Because the CCP knows it's slipping. They're smart enough to know that they're slipping, but they're not smart enough to actually like change themselves to, stop the slipping. So they know they're slipping, and instead of like changing themselves, they're going to eventually just try to invade Taiwan. Because again, that's what totalitarian regimes do when they know like some form of their end is probably approaching. Is they try to have a quick and glorious war to restore imperial glory. And in modern day, usually you don't actually phrase it that way. But then when Putin invaded Ukraine, he literally gave that long, rambly speech for like an hour beforehand about like how everything that used to belong to the Russian Empire still belongs to Russia today. So I might be wrong there. Maybe we are just straight up reverting back to declaring to saying the quiet part out loud, I guess, and shouting for the glory of the empire of the what was the last one in China, the Qing dynasty, I think, for the glory of the new Qing dynasty or something. I guess in his case, the Jin dynasty. So they're eventually going to go for Taiwan. Uh, it is one of the few things that is certain is that it will happen during fall, during autumn. It has to if China is even remotely as smart as people in my comments keep trying to like demand that I give it credit for. Because fall, autumn is when the waters in the Taiwan Strait are the calmest, and calmer waters, weaker waves mean less travel time for a amphibious force or any kind of boat going across a body of water. And so during autumn, a landing force launching from Fujian province would take about 6, maybe 7 hours to cross the strait. Whereas if they did it in spring, which is when the waters are roughest, it would take between 10 and 12 hours. And summer and winter are like the middle ground in between that, where it would take like probably 8 to 10. So if they're smart about it, they're almost certainly going to do it during autumn of whatever particular year they choose to do it. So autumn is the time, and I would assume potentially they might give it a couple more years and do another. If you guys remember, in August and September, they did a mass buildup in Xiamen and Fuzhou. You might have seen Chinese people like putting up videos on Twitter and on TikTok and stuff showing like random like shopping center parking lots just full of tanks. They were doing a quote unquote normal military drill, and it obviously, and also they were seen in satellite surveillance and stuff, welding and bolting SAM systems, surface to air missiles or air defense systems, onto the upper decks of like civilian ferries. So what seems to be clearly happening to me is they're doing practice runs each year of massing force to then deploy, and during these practice runs that they're claiming are just drills, they're also covertly doing like legitimate preparations, aka, bolting SAM systems to the top of ferries that they're going to commandeer to get extra forces over there on top of just their amphibious fleet, which is not as big as it needs to be. However, they won't be able to make it big enough in time because if they really want to have even like a 10 to 20% chance of succeeding, because the whole thing is essentially just doomed to begin with anyways, no matter